Alright, what's going on, everybody? Today I'll be giving you guys my thoughts on episodes 5 and 6 of I'm Standing on a Million Lives. If you haven't seen either episode, I'd suggest watching those episodes before watching this review, as I'll be getting into spoilers. I'll leave the timestamps in the description and in the comment section, just in case you don't want to hear my thoughts on last week's episode. You can just skip to my thoughts on this week's episode. So with that being said, I'll be focusing the bulk of this video on this week's episode. I just wanted to cover a bit of episode 5 since I haven't been able to do weekly reviews. I thought that this last week's episode was good in terms of the writing for Kusu and how it introduces another tough situation with the cliffhanger at the end. Episode 5 is centered on Kusu, and it depicts her struggle to overcome her weakness so that she can protect her friends and the people in this game-like world. Early on in the episode, it shows how she has always been physically weak and not good at anything like the other kids in school. Kusu wanted to find her own identity, her own purpose, and in doing so, she's decided that she wants to find a cure for the disease that her and her mother have. However, now that she's in this other world, she has to focus on surviving, and as we've seen so far, Kusu has been dealt a bad hand in both the real world and in this other world. One thing I really liked about this episode is how it highlights her determination to get stronger and protect others as she trains with Kahabel, and later on when Kusu and Yusuke fight against the kobolds. I also like how the episode focuses on her mental state after being rescued from the bandit camp, and then later after she kills her first goblin. The scene where she stabs and kills the goblin was great. This was Kusu's first kill, and so it was fitting that she'd be in shock and filled with sadness. The way that she reacted, by apologizing to the creature over and over while crying, shows how kind and gentle this character really is. Kusu takes no pleasure in fighting, unlike Kahabel, which we get a little bit of her backstory later that explains why she likes to slice things up with her sword. I sort of like how eccentric her character is. Anyway, later in the episode, as the group heads toward Rododorbo, they encounter some kobolds that are attacking soldiers and civilians. The last part of this episode is where the episode title, What a Life is Worth, comes into play. Yusuke initially wants to ignore them and continue moving toward their objective, since at the time he believes that they aren't part of the quest. It is at this point where Kusu reminds him of what she told him back when Shindo was captured. Essentially, Kusu told him that the actions taken while trying to save someone also matter. The fact that she's willing to basically risk her chance of making it out alive for people that aren't even real says a lot about the virtue and caring nature of this character. They both decide to stay behind while the others go on ahead. The scene where Kusu takes out her weapons the moment the kobold closed in on her to attack was great, and it was a smart use of the world's game-like mechanics. This moment also marked the character's growth, as she is no longer shaken up like at the beginning of the episode when she killed the goblin. After they save the soldiers and civilians, Yusuke uses his new ability to absorb magic from the kobold's blood and heal the injured by speeding up their metabolism. I really like how resourceful Yusuke has been given the classes he's been assigned. Anyway, they learn that the soldiers they saved were from the kingdom of Diok, and that they're planning on taking the civilians traveling with them to Rododorbo to execute them for practicing the religion of Artios. At this point, Yusuke considers the possibility that the convicts are the goods that they must deliver in order to complete their quest. There's also the possibility that they stumbled across an event and are supposed to save them. Yusuke and his allies are presented with a tough moral dilemma: complete the quest and save themselves, or fail the quest and save the convicts. This was an excellent cliffhanger and a lead-in to the next episode, and in general, I like how the morality of the characters has been put into question so far. Now it's time to talk about this week's episode, which starts out with Yusuke and his allies trying to figure out what to do about the current situation. There were quite a few things that I liked about this episode, as well as one minor issue that I'll talk about later. I liked that they took their time to hear out both sides and try to figure out the best course of action. The group speaks with Fafasil, a Arturos missionary, and Camilto, the kingdom soldier. We got quite a bit of information in regards to the kingdom of Diok. Fafasil tells them how the kingdom of Diok has been torn apart by an endless war between Arturos worshippers and worshippers of the kingship. While no one knows which side started the conflict, it was a cycle of retaliation on both sides. Statues of the kings were destroyed, so the Arturos religion was banned, and many of its followers were killed, and its religious books were destroyed. This story of war reminds me of wars waged in real life and religious extremists that misuse or ignore the scriptures and go against religious doctrine. What stuck out to me is how Fossil talks about how the kingdom has been divided and that the actions of some Arturo's followers are in direct opposition to the teachings of their god. That is something that I can relate to as a religious person, and we've seen situations all throughout history where this type of stuff has happened. So I like how realistic the current situation is in Diok. From Camilto's perspective, the new king of Diok is righteous. He is loyal to the king and respects him because he saved many people from poverty and homelessness. The king wants to unify the land by eliminating Arturo's religious followers and expanding the kingdom's territory. When the new girl, Magi Purple, and please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing her name, hears about the king being a dictator and the fact that he's offering slaves to people who have been affected by the war, she immediately goes off on a tangent. They were simply trying to hear out both sides, and she jumps the gun and starts bad-mouthing Diok's king. At this point, she has already made up her mind that they should go ahead and just kill these guys. I'm really starting to hate this character. She started to bother me in last week's episode too when she kept complaining about how Yusuke is able to gain experience by healing people and cooking for people. And Yusuke's response to this boiled down to don't hate the player, hate the game, and I totally agree. However, to give her some credit, I think that the plan that she came up with at the beginning of the episode was pretty smart. It would involve escorting the soldiers to Rado Dorbo and then stopping the execution of the convicts. The new girl's outburst angers Camilto and eventually leads to his betrayal days later inside of a cave that they were passing through as a shortcut around the mountains. I totally saw that betrayal coming, by the way. Anyway, while trapped inside of the cave, the group has to overcome a series of traps that mechanically are very video game-like. We see Yusuke solve a typical puzzle to stop the swinging hammers, and there's even a timing trap that manages to knock Yusuke into a pit. Once again, I love to see Yusuke using his head, using his knives to create footholds from the stone wall to climb back up. The episode ends with the rest of the group entering a room with a mummified gargoyle. Camilto thought that it would be enough to kill them or at least slow them down. I like the design of the gargoyle and it will be interesting to see how they handle fighting it next week. Overall, I thought this week's episode was solid as we got a bit of world building and got to see the characters handle a multitude of challenging situations. The only negative thing I really have to say about this episode is in terms of the pacing. It seemed as though it was a bit uneven and that the passage of time between one particular scene, it seemed kind of odd. Other than that, pretty good episode. Let me know what you guys think about both of these episodes in the comment section below. Like the video, subscribe if you guys enjoyed listening. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Fear No Hate. I'm out of here. Peace.